Hey, do you like our new music?
I love it.
Surprise!
Me.
I changed my hair, I changed the music. I had a productive couple of weeks off. I thought, let's make the most of COVID. Welcome to 21st Century Saints. It is still us. Our podcast and live stream for members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, those affiliated with, those who hang around us. Here in the UK and around the world. I am your host, Jane Christie. I should start remembering to tell people what the date it is in case you're listening afterwards. Today is the 16th of August. I am now recovered from COVID completely.
The date today's episode is particularly important to make sure you announce though, Jane.
It is. We're going to come and talk about that.
Yeah.
I have the energy levels of a sprightly 16-year-old, I don't know, greyhound or something. Like, I'm definitely not as, I'm feeling mentally like I'm ready to go, but my body's like, do you have to? So I'm really excited because I missed you guys. I'm really excited to be able to catch up with you all. We also have Ruth.
I missed you too. I really missed you both. I'm really sorry you were poorly, but and we often go quiet over the summer, don't we? But yeah, miss you guys.
Yeah. But I mean, it was nice having some chill time. I have learned a lot from it. But yes, I need my people. So Ruth, are you good? Have you had a good couple of weeks?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, I've had a couple of days away with the family camping in Wales, which was windy and lovely and sunny bits and rainy bits and just fun being away together. Yeah, all good.
Awesome. And we've got some big stuff to talk about tonight. We've got big event. We also have Queen Sarah Elizabeth Delaney with us. How are you doing? And how's your holiday been? Your summer?
I'm doing great. I've had been away for 10 days. I got home on Sunday, had a few days down in Dartmoor camping on my own, which was great fun. Did some walking, some chilling, some doing nothing. So I had a lovely time. And then I went and joined a whole group of friends from another faith community and had a summer camp with them for 7 days. And that was amazing.
I love
that was
it.
Amazing.
Are you going to join? Were you hanging out with like a new cult, or is it people we're friends with?
I think we need to be careful. They're definitely not a cult. People we're friends with. I mean, are we going for this?
I'm just checking. I just wanted to do a quick check-in.
Do you know what? I hung out with Community of Christ, who are our friends. They love us. We love them. They're our best friends. They love us. We love them. So I hung out with them. They had a summer camp for a week and they invited me to go and join them. So I went and joined them and participated in all sorts of fabulous things with everything from bongo bingo adapted to make it great for a faith community. Because I'm thinking, how are you actually going to adapt bongo bingo to a kind of churchy faith community setting? This is going to be interesting, but it was really good fun. And some fantastic spiritual discussions about where is God leading you and what is God inviting you to do next. And came away with this wonderful sense of the wild abandon to the holy, deep calling of God.
Nice.
You know, the wild abandon.
I love that kind of language. Not well-behaved ladylike behaviour to the will of God.
No, there wasn't a lot of well-behaved lady behaviour. There was a lot of honest. There was a lot of honest talking and sharing and dissenting and loving. And I just heard one young adult who's got kind of lots of stuff going on in her life. And she just, God was in this moment. She just said to me about all the stuff and problems going on in her life. And we were chatting and she said, I know nobody here judges me. And I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa. Because in 45 years of being around the LDS church, I've not heard anyone experiencing similar challenges in life be able to say, I know nobody here judges me. And that was like, things go away. All in all,
And Sarah's internet's being a little bit naughty again. That's okay. It's fine. You know, we get you back. We just chatting to you. And I think so. Yeah, I'm really glad you had a wonderful time.
Fantastic. Refreshed and ready to go.
Me too. Yeah, I am buzzing to talk about this stuff. So we have a really, really big announcement tonight that we are looking forward to telling you. We have an invitation to extend. But we want to kick off with the fact that tonight is the anniversary, the 1-year anniversary of the launch date for our 21st Century Saints Safeguarding Project. And honestly, what has been achieved in the past year is absolutely dynamite. Sarah, did you imagine we would get across the finish line for? I mean, obviously it's an ongoing, moving finish line, but you know,
absolutely.
Did you think we'd get there?
No, I did not. When we had discussions based on the back of having spoken to victims and people that had been so hurt by abuse and harm within the church, and we were so concerned about their failure to take notice of our safeguarding concerns. When we started this campaign, it was a year ago today, when we notified our bishops in writing and said, this is what we're going to be doing. I've still got the message here in front of me. This is what we're going to be doing. This is why we're going to be doing it. This is how we're doing this. And then we started this a year ago. And although
what did you say? What did you tell your bishop? What did
I tell my bishop? Hang on. I'll read you the message I sent to my bishop on that very day.
Hey, Bishop, I'm going to go change the world. Let me know if you have any feedback, more or less.
100%. I said, Bishop, I wanted to tell you something myself. Based on my 25 years plus experience of working with sexual abuse, both victims and offenders in risk management and programs, my despair over the years that as a church we don't do safeguarding well just deepens. I'm working with a podcaster, 21st Century Saints Jane. She's active LDS woman, loves the church, and wants to support to try and move things along. This is 100% not anti-church or church bashing, but an acknowledgement of all the many benefits of being part of our faith community children and young people can experience, and how we need to ensure they are safeguarded. We are going live at 6:30 p.m. tomorrow, Wednesday, 17th of August. If you're able to listen and have any thoughts or questions, I'd love to talk with you about this. Please know this comes from a good place, a desire to see the church do better, protect more, and move from bare minimum to excellence. I will help in whatever way the church will allow us both to assist. Offers haven't been accepted in the past, though. Our plans are discuss concerns, what the church could do, how and why.
I think that totally sums up where we were both at, and there was a lot of reassuring we had to do to church leaders, even that, you know, that email is couched in such language of, you know, this isn't anti, you know, this isn't, I'm not being threatening here. We wanted and still do want everyone to feel safe. I think we still do a lot of making sure that people don't feel like we are coming for them.
When you say people,
yes,
you mean men.
Yes,
because Ruth, I love it. I love that, because we do. That is just what we mean, men.
Because it's fragile egos that have been puffed up with priesthood power. I was in a good mood this morning, that can't fathom that you could have anything to tell them from your experiences, from your feral housewives. Love to be a housewife. I wouldn't actually like to be a housewife. They just can't fathom it, and they've got to get over that in order to actually tap into all of the help and the support and the knowledge and the experience and the wisdom that you have to offer them. And it's not fair that you have to pussyfoot around to bring them closer to you, instead of just saying, this is the direction we're going, keep up. I just find it so frustrating. And and one of the reasons why it's so very freeing to say, I'm done with a lot of you, because however many odd years tiptoeing around those sorts of personalities. And I'm very fortunate that, thankfully, that's not the man I married. Yes, he was a Mormon, but it wasn't the man that I married, because otherwise we wouldn't have lasted as long as we have. And they're not the men that I raised either. But there are so many whom the church is such a comfy place for that type of personality. And it frustrates me no end that you've had to couch things in such a very delicate way when it's just plain common sense.
I mean, we were alluding to this just before we came on air, that in a lot of ways at church, our experience is having to leave all or part of our personality at the door, leave all of our professional experience, or certainly at least the professionalism that requires, that demands respect, the fact that we can go to meetings and be assertive and have expectations, and that dynamic, often we can have an identity crisis in church because I don't feel like me here. And then, of course, we're sort of telling us, but it's the real us. We can really be ourselves at church, and it's actually not. So yeah, we have to remember the personalities, the threats to authority, how we don't want to be seen as people who are trying to disrupt or worse, be anti-Mormon. Sarah, did you?
It shouldn't matter though, should it? If we're trying to say this is what you need to do to safeguard your most vulnerable people, it shouldn't matter whether we agree with their theology or not, whether we rock up and talk the way we do on a podcast or not. It should be, hey, we need what you've got to offer because we need to make sure our vulnerable people are safe. It shouldn't matter.
So did you get a reply to your email?
I did.
You did? I did not remember that you got a reply.
So you would have sent that on what day? On the 16th?
Yeah, because we went live the day before.
Okay. So
the reply I got was really
so on a Tuesday night. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to picture this. Okay. You sent it on a Tuesday night then, presumably. If it was a year ago, would it have been Tuesday the 16th?
I did. I sent it on the 16th of August at 1947.
So the poor bishop, who at that point would have been taking the young men's, because we've had that shift around that means the bishop's in charge of young men activities. The poor bishop would have been busy down at the chapel yet again, probably not had his tea yet, gets in the door 9:30 at night, opens his laptop or sees it on his phone, ping, oh, for crying out loud.
And he's thinking, come on.
I love it.
Well, he sent the most gracious reply in that case, Ruth, because he said, hi, Sarah, thanks for sending this. I'll have a listen to your podcast. It's a subject very close to my heart, and I'd love to discuss further with you at some point. Is that a fantastic? It was a lovely reply.
It's lovely. Yeah.
Lovely reply.
I didn't get a reply. So I copied in my bishop and stake president, and they didn't reply. Did mention, my bishop mentioned in passing, and my stake president did have a sort of brief chat about it when I later turned up, but we were kind of talking about some other things, and I'm like, well, I didn't really need a reply, to be perfectly honest with you. However, it would have been nice, wouldn't it? Actually, any email I send, because there's been a few, it would be nice to get a, just every now and again.
I do wonder if you were a man that held the Melchizedek priesthood, power and authority, if you would get a response.
No, probably not, because they're all volunteers. So
okay.
We're all volunteers when it suits, and and then we're all very knowledgeable people when it suits as well, aren't we? So it's how that works. They're probably far too busy.
Yeah, I mean, I try to be really, easy on people about, anytime I message anybody about anything, I don't expect you to be at my beck and call. However, eventually, if there's a pattern of you're just not ever answering me, I will probably take the hint. You don't really want to engage. So that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah. And so back to what you were saying, Jane, did we ever think a year after sending that message that we sent to our bishops to say, this is what we're doing? And because we thought we'd tell them ourselves before somebody else goes and tells them and says, do you know what that woman's doing? Do you know what those women are up to? Did we think we'd be here a year later? No. I think there were many, many times when we brazened it out and said we're actually totally confident this is what's going to happen. But there were many times we didn't think it was going to happen. There were many times we felt there was stalling, there was delaying tactics, there were problems. There were many times we didn't think we were going to get here to the point we're at. Certainly within, and it was less than a year, the decisions were formally announced on the 1st of July that these were the changes the church was going to bring in around safeguarding. What, 10 months it took? And
exactly. It was,
so
was it 1st of July, 1st of June? I thought it was 1st of June.
1st of June, sorry, 1st of June.
Well, not only just that, but the movements to make this happen were sort of happening at the beginning of the year. So we've known about this and the sort of steps that were going to happen. So this did happen like lightning. And I think, I'll be honest, it's not that I didn't think this would happen. We in this space, I think you just expect to get kicked out for sort of sneezing incorrectly. We're in the UK, excommunications happen. That's the context of the faith that we live in. If you're doing anything that kind of feels a bit, makes people uncomfortable. So we had lots of those types of conversations.
I thought we'd have been gone.
But
I thought we'd have been history by now.
Yeah, but I do remember, I think it was by the time we had got, I think it was just after last October, and we were doing the open letter and things. And I remember thinking, this is an inevitability at this point. So many people want it. Legal frameworks are changing, media expectations, what other churches are doing. There's not going to be a reason to actively stop doing this. So I feel like it's inevitable, and I feel like it's a case of when it happens, not if it happens. And I remember sort of saying that's particularly about DBS checks, because we knew they were coming down the pipeline, but there was a lot of sort of tweaking to happen. But no, you couldn't have envisaged the timeline.
No,
it's very impressive.
And I obviously, alongside for the journey, and you guys doing all the donkey work, all the credit goes to you too. But I remember being very frustrated on your behalf by some of the shenanigans that were going on to try and circumvent it and say that the current system was absolutely A-okay by people who benefited financially from that. And
yes,
my fear is that they're going to continue to find a way to benefit financially from any new system that gets put into place. But that's on them. Do you know what? That's between them and any God that they worship. And I really hope there's a pearly gates that they have to stand in front of and account for why they would get in the way of safeguarding because of a bit of this.
Yeah. And do you know, I feel frustrated and think, do you know what? If you want to do this, do it as a calling. Do it voluntarily. Don't make it a business. Don't make safeguarding the LDS Church a business. But and
keep your hands clean. Use an outside agency, because we like saying we wear it as a badge of honor that everyone's a volunteer, but actually it's a huge pitfall when it comes to something like this, because nobody is doing it with any sort of professionalism. Nobody takes accountability because they have been given the responsibility and the training, the proper training, and they can just hide behind this camouflage of, well, we're all volunteers, so that must equal we're all good people. No, it doesn't.
No. Many people, and Jane, I know, has had the same experience, and I imagine you have as well, Ruth. When we've told people that the church are bringing in DBS checks, and we've kind of said how delighted we are and happy that is happening, and people have shared that joy and said, that's great, so pleased your church are doing that. Everybody has said, who's leading, who's doing the DBS checks. And when we've actually said, well, the system the church are using is the lawyer who runs the church abuse helpline for ecclesiastical leaders will be overseeing and managing the DBS. The very words, without fail, every single person has said, from professional working in the field to other church members, the very words they've said are, isn't that a conflict of interest?
And that's the polite politic terms they use. I mean, really, really, people have not couched their language in the way that we're doing. I'll be honest, I think there is a story there that is going to be told. Because that's what happens. One of the, one of the things that in the church, it's often framed as one of those things about repentance in the last days that make you feel really like fearful and awkward, that, things that are hidden will be, declared from the rooftops and things like that. And this is the type of thing, if you think you're acting in a non-transparent way, no one's ever going to find out, oh my goodness, everyone is going to get to know. So if there's anything that you even could have the appearance of being a conflict, get your house in order. Definitely do that. Absolutely. So I'd like to move this on, because what we'd like to do is answer some of the most common questions that we get and take any viewer questions. So if there's anything you'd like to ask us about what we've learned or the context or whatever it is, just give us, put a message in the chat, and we'll come to it. But what about victim voices? What kinds of things would you guys say we've learned from the work that we've done with victims?
We've heard very many sad stories, tragic stories, courageous stories, heartfelt stories from victims and their family members. And some of the things that we've heard repeatedly is that people just want the church to validate their experience. They want the church to acknowledge that they've been abused, that this was by another church member, that somewhere in the mix of all this was church membership and church activity. And we've heard things like, one victim, parents of a son who was abused, said to us, we just long to tell our precious son the church cares. And we've heard many comments of that sort, that people say, we just want to tell our child the church cares. People say, we just want the church to acknowledge the hurt and just say, we're sorry you've been hurt. We're going to try and do better. And we've heard that repeatedly, haven't we?
Yeah.
Plus real concern that people express about people still being at church, that they feel are a risk, and they're worried about the risks not being managed safely.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that has stayed with me most is one of the people that we were working with had shared the story of her child reporting abuse, and these parents are, without fail, these parents and people who've come forward have apologized to us for for not speaking out enough, or that they are thanking us, and you're just like, oh my goodness, I have never seen such just vulnerability, and you don't see that you are the most important thing here. So it's a privilege to be able to do that, to talk to people about, and it's very case by case, how much power you have in this situation. Here is what we've learned. Here are some things and suggestions and some options that you have. Here are some things that we could do. And you don't have to do anything, but if you want to, and giving people some things that if they wanted to, they could. Is this something that I want to maybe think about? Is incredibly empowering, but I think it's the inevitability that over years this has stayed with people, and the helplessness that they feel. And the phrase I remember these parents using was when their daughter disclosed and had reported that their daughter, in telling the parents, had said, I knew they wouldn't believe me. The other thing, the same, and this is a child we're talking about. Yeah. The boys get to do whatever they want.
That was heartbreaking to listen to. The boys get to do whatever they want.
And I mean, here we're hearing it in the context of safeguarding and abuse, but you know that phrase is actually, that's baked right into Mormonism. The authority, yes, those power dynamics, and a child has been exposed to that, and that's the lesson they've learned about the church. That's the thing that they remember.
And I think the thing that breaks my heart the most is that I no longer believe. So walking away from what I consider to be a faith group that supports abusive situations and has a track record of supporting abusers over victims isn't hard, because it's not my faith anymore, and it's not. I don't need it to feel that that's my spiritual journey. But the conflict for somebody for whom that is their path to God, that is their relationship with deity, through those double doors on a Sunday morning, sat on that pew next to their abuser, or a couple of rows in front of their abuser, week in, week out, and their leaders, the people that they trust, who have the ability to discern and to say this is right in the eyes of God, fail them time and time again. The emotional damage that must do to a child's psyche, or an adult psyche, to anybody who's been abused and is vulnerable, is incredible, because it's not just a temporal for your lifetime damage. You're seeing your eternities getting lost to you, because you're hanging on to your faith and going every week and putting yourself through that pain again and again and again. It's like getting run over on the motorway every Sunday for the rest of your life, or choose to walk away and die in a different way. But either way, you're dying inside, or you're spiritually dying. Your choice. How do you choose that? If that's your faith, how do you choose that?
Yeah, and that's one of the awful things about abuse, isn't it? It destroys faith, it destroys relationships. There's brokenness. There's nothing but brokenness in the abuse, is there?
Yeah.
And when you, sorry, on you go.
I was going to say, and offering some compassion here for those that abuse. There is no. Sometimes, and Sarah, you are the expert on this, but sometimes for people who are abusive, they are also the victims of abuse themselves many times over in their lifetime, and that has led to the behaviour where they feel that abuse is an option. And for them to not have those boundaries, the consequences to their actions put in place, is they're constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop, aren't they? And it is never going to drop within Mormonism as it's currently constituted, because we don't put the victim first. We keep it a safe place for abuse to take place.
One of the things that frustrates me immensely is the number of times we have heard people say, both church leaders, bishops, stake presidents, leaders, and people that have experienced abuse, the times we have heard them say, well, there's nothing we can do. There hasn't been a conviction. And I've spoken to him about it and he's denied it. So there's nothing I can do.
So hang on a minute. You can be told not to take a sacrament for masturbating. Last time I checked, no 13-year-old got convicted in a court of law for masturbating. You're not taking the sacrament. You're not participating in youth camp. You're not doing this. You're not doing that. We're going to publicly shame you. But unless we've done a full trial and you've been found guilty in a court for raping a child, we're going to let you carry on coming to church every Sunday. We're not going to put any sanctions in place on your membership, because the police haven't had a problem with you.
I think also, though, it's really important. What I've learned about how we need to approach this is very complicated. So I think even sort of where before I would have viewed it as the sort of language of sanctions being put in place where there's an accusation, I don't think I would do that now, because I don't think Because I think there's nuance around it. What I do believe is that each and every case has to be risk assessed.
Yeah.
And, so we're not necessarily responding, someone's made a complaint, there is no evidence, and that is the entire process that's happened.
I appreciate that, yeah.
So I feel like, actually, do you know, it's so messy. Yeah,
it's messy and it's complicated, but it's about having, and this is where it frustrates me, that they should actually have some experts that they could go and talk to about this.
Yeah.
And say, we're really worried, we've had this allegation, nothing seems to be progressing through the criminal justice system, we don't quite know how to handle the kind of risk, because the victim is saying this happened, he's saying it didn't happen, what do we do? And they need to be talking. This is why they need the transparency of the engagement of services like MWG Children's Charity that specialise in exploitation and abuse, 318 that specialise in religious and faith communities and abuse. They need the expertise from people in those charities that they can go to and get advice, because they need to approach somebody with a discussion along the lines of, this allegation is a problem, you clearly need to be protected from further allegations, and we need to make sure that everybody else feels safe as well. And really talk with the person about putting some boundaries and plans in place that they will stick to. And most people, if they've had an allegation of sexual abuse and it hadn't happened, and let's be very careful, we believe it does happen. When victims say it happens, it happens.
Yeah.
But even if somebody is thinking, well, maybe this didn't happen, somebody would want boundaries around themselves to be protected from from further allegation and their behaviour being misinterpreted.
Absolutely.
And a false, and I say that lightly because I don't believe victims lie. So I believe if a victim is saying it happened, it happened.
Yeah. And I also sorry, go ahead.
But there's ways for them to approach that discussion with somebody who has had an allegation against them, so that they will agree to safety things being in place to protect them and other people. And I've done that 100 times over with working with unconvicted sexual abusers. I've done it 100 times over, and most people will go with it if you just have the discussion in the right way with the right language. But the church haven't got a track record of going and talking to people that can do that for them. They're too worried about being
rolling quick
criticised. They're too worried about being criticised.
Yeah, I think.
Jane, are you okay? Are you okay, Jane? Do you need to go?
You need to.
Yeah, I'm just directing my army of minions.
That's cool.
From right here. Go, Ruth.
Cool.
Well, what I was going to say was, and I always hark back to my time working in a primary school, because that was my real experience of being in an environment where safeguarding was absolute paramount, and the training was robust, and the training went from person who was there for a lunchtime break as a member of staff all the way through to somebody who was, the head teacher and there day in, day out, all day, every day. So everybody had the safeguarding training, regardless of the amount of contact time they had with kids. And part of that training is about understanding what a disclosure might look like, and understanding how to capture that information, and understanding what to do with that information in a timely way. And that process going bump, 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 as fast as it needed to go. And the right agencies and outside agencies becoming involved at the earliest possible stage, because the church as it stands at the moment, even with the new safeguarding that's coming in, we all looked at that and went, okay, it's nice that they're doing something, but there is such a huge way to go to get even to the same standard of a local youth group, let alone a primary school, which the children who are there on a Sunday, they're experiencing the proper level of safeguarding in schools and in maybe sports groups that they attend. And then on a Sunday and on their weekday night activities, they're experiencing a very different level of safeguarding. And I think we need to get it up to at least that same standard to do them any service. But it's about sort of knowing where your limitations are. And as members of the church, as volunteers, as just ordinary lay people that are there for a couple of hours on a Sunday, you are the eyes and ears of, if you want to value the hierarchy at church, you are the eyes and ears of the bishop. He will not know everything that's going on. He will not overhear every conversation or strange thing that a child has said about someone's touching them somewhere, or that's normal or whatever. They won't see every picture that's drawn by a 3-year-old, but somebody will do, and somebody needs to have that autonomy and feel that ability to take that and know that it's going to be heard and they're going to be listened to. And that's the part of it that I think that I worry about with this training, because Sarah, tell me, as far as I'm aware,
could we come back to the training just shortly? Could we? Sure. Because there are some things we want to deal with that lots of people are asking about. We have a question in the chat I'm going to address in a second, but since we're talking about some of the messiness about the things that we're seeing, let's talk for a little minute about, we've got a lot of our friends in the chat. We've got a lot of long-time supporters in the chat. We've also got people who have spoken with us and shared their stories. Thank you so much for your vulnerability and your openness, and just want to honor that. Let's talk for a second about approaches. So, we're hearing about, for example, if there are situations when an accusation has been made that perhaps isn't being either thoroughly investigated, and it's not the church's job to investigate.
No, it's definitely not.
Should not be investigating. That's for law enforcement.
They should not.
Absolutely. But risk assessment has to happen.
Yes.
We have situations where it's been reported to us that people are concerned that someone who has abused is in their ward or is being taught by missionaries, that we've been able to bring that to the attention of church leaders and have discussions around that. Sometimes the church is all over it. Sometimes we've seen things being handled brilliantly well. We've also seen things being handled not so well. So I want to talk. One of the things I want to talk about is the Floodlit approach. Now, Floodlit is one of our heroes. Their campaign is incredible, and I think it's just really important that I make that super clear. We don't use that approach. Sarah, would you maybe like to sort of share some thoughts about how public it becomes when we've just no, Sarah didn't want to answer that question. she's back. What happens when certainly in the UK, we're in a smaller area, when people are sort of named as, you're an abuser, you're living in this area, and here is where you're likely to be on a Sunday. Do you want to share some thoughts about the approach of organisations that would name abusers? I think we've still lost Sarah. Okay, well, we're waiting for Sarah. Ruth, do you have any thoughts, anything that you want to share there? Because I do have something I was going to say, but...
about the Floodlit campaign and how they are doing. So for anyone that's not been following what they've been doing over in the States, Floodlit have been very, very good at finding out about abuse that's taken place. Often they'll find the newspaper articles, won't they, and make sure that gets out into the wider circles of Mormonism, and whether that's via Reddit or Facebook groups or whatever it is. They don't let the story just be a flash in the pan, and they join the dots up. And I think in some way that's quite powerful, but it is very public, and obviously it's court cases, so it's public knowledge anyway. But here in the UK, while that would be powerful, I think the approach that you've taken is you want to be victim focused. So it's about making it so that the victims feel that they can come and talk to you, share their experiences, and you support them to get whatever justice looks like for them, or wherever their journey wants to go, rather than be completely focused on the news articles and the case by cases that obviously in the States there's far more numbers because there's bigger populations over there of members that the information, and it's horrific when you see the stats. It's horrific, and it's also very, very I find it, I get irate when I see those stats that Floodlit have collated and the work that they've done in the background. And then you hear the absolute nonsense that's spouted by church leadership about how little abuse takes place within the church and what a wonderful job they do of it. I was very incensed to hear that a 70 has just been called, who is a lawyer for Curtin McConkie. Woohoo!
Yeah.
Gosh.
Sarah.
I think, that's one thing that I've been quite interested in, actually, is just what role the lawyers play in this church. It's been a fresh understanding for me as to just the role played by lawyers.
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to, I mean, again, I'm just want to reinforce, we have so much respect for Floodlit, consider Floodlit a friend, and we're in touch. So yeah, they're absolutely incredible, and the work they do is really good. And I don't think that it can be understated how important it is to show prevalence, and they are doing that really, really well. Yeah. We don't tend to share stories about victims or cases that have been made public. We maybe sort of talk around them, and not to say that we wouldn't if there's something that is really relevant to be discussed. But I think so often there's misinformation, so often how something's reported in the media is maybe not balanced, and that can be because it's been understated, or a threat is being sort of played down and that everything's okay when it very much isn't, or it can be the opposite. And obviously we've had stories in the media where groups of people have been completely inflamed. And do you remember when one of those sort of more recent spate of sort of publicly vigilante, and it was a paediatrician who was attacked in his home because they didn't understand the bloody word. People with mistaken identity, where it's it happens so easily. So we try to avoid anything where anyone for any reason might be at risk. It's about keeping everyone safe, and that includes that sometimes is including a perpetrator for really good reasons.
And they are really difficult calls to make, because I absolutely understand the call that people make, that they want to know who the offenders are and where they live and where they go to work. And I absolutely understand why people want that information. Yeah. The problem is sometimes that information actually increases risk rather than manages it safely. And for example, I remember when I was working, we had a group of about 15 of the highest risk men in the West Midlands that we were managing. We were seeing them a couple of times a week. Police were visiting them at home at least every week. They were electronically tagged. Some of them had got satellite surveillance on them. There were regular lie detectors in use. There was huge amounts of work going on to monitor their every movement. Then the News of the World decided they were going to put all their photographs and addresses in a wonderful spreadsheet all about these offenders live among you. Every single one of those 15 men disappeared. And to this day, 10 years after I'd finished working in that area, nobody still knew where they were, because they knew their life was at risk. They disappeared, which meant they'd have taken up a new identity in a community where nobody knew them, and their risk would have been massively increased. So that worries me, that we move a risk because we think we're doing something that is really, really good. We think we're doing something that's managing a risk, and it can be getting in the way of something that is actually managing the risk. But it's very difficult, because what can never happen is and this is the problem at churches, we have to make sure that victims are protected and prioritised, and that if victims are being threatened, are being persecuted, are being harassed, that is handled and managed appropriately and safely. And we have to get the risk management in place at church to a really high standard.
Yeah.
And I think what we've tried to focus on in the campaign is the giving a faith community the language, sort of. I know how this is going to sound, but for people in the UK, now Floodlit has sort of created a map of cases worldwide, and you will find people on the UK section and things like that. Now, I've got no idea. I don't know anyone who's named on the Floodlit website. So unless you know them, that's really relevant. And I don't. These are boogeymen. These are sort of the monsters that hide under the bed. And what I've been sort of really trying to focus on is when we have a language, it's not, although it can be, about the stranger who's coming into the ward and we don't really know what his background is. Mormons want to feel safe. We want to circle the wagons. When it feels like there's an attack coming from the outside, we know what to do with that. But when it's families and when it's leadership and when it's our best friends and when it's systemic and when reporting is the problem, these are the things that I want to put my energy into, because what it does for me is it reinforces an idea, because by virtue simply of the fact that I don't know any of these people, they are not as real to me. They're not a threat. They're something that I can think is in a box, and that's the way of I don't really need to think about it. Oh, but I know it's really kind of close, and so I need to be super careful about who my kids are talking to, and that's not really it's where I want to put my energy. Now, that said, and I just want to super reinforce, Floodlit are doing a fantastic job of showing prevalence, and we do need to demonstrate prevalence because people are speaking about it. So
and they've got a fabulous.
I think we've just lost you again, Sarah. So I guess what I wanted to highlight,
they've got a fantastic way of showing the number.
Yeah, I got you. Keep going.
Floodlit are absolutely fantastic at showing the sheer number of church leaders and the calling they're in that have abused, which means the church can't keep arguing that this isn't happening, because Floodlit have got the data. They know what they're talking about. They can evidence it. But we are in danger of creating an illusion of safety at church. And my biggest fear is that people will now think we're doing DBS checks, that, everything's safe now. What we need to really be focusing on is changing the culture at church. That's what we need to do. We need to change the culture so that we are talking openly about abuse. We're educating our youth, our children, our women, our men. We're educating and talking about abuse so people know what it looks like. They recognise it. They're able to believe if they're told about abuse and it happens to be their best friend or their brother or their son, that people are able to believe it, however shocking and horrifying it is, so that victims are believed all the time. And that's what we've got to get to, is a change in culture that will actually help to make church safer. And because illusion of safety is very dangerous.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's sort of my reason for discussing it tonight is, as we're talking about these frequently asked questions, and Floodlit is doing such great work. It's just two very different approaches.
I love Floodlit's work.
Yeah, they're everything.
I was going to say, I think some of the things that are systemic to the church, or certainly the church of my teen years and young adulthood, are behaviours that the membership will really need to be pointed out to them, that this is, if not abusive itself, a type of grooming for abuse. And it's harsh to hear it, but you need to hear it. You need to hear that a stake president or a bishop sitting down with a child Somebody under 18 years old is a child, and asking them about what sexual acts they did in graphic detail, regardless of whether or not they wanted to tell them. I've been told you did this. Tell me about it. Did you enjoy it? How many times did you orgasm? What positions did you use? Where were you at? Did you do it again? How did you feel? How did that make you feel? That is abusive.
Yeah,
and
it is. Yeah.
And when I say
100%.
grooming people for that, it's normalizing that and saying that's what you do. If you've got something you have done that you don't feel comfortable with, you've got to go and tell this person about it. And behind closed doors, they are going to ask you these details. As parents, we need to say, no, that is not okay. In no other circumstance would I allow my child to go and sit in front of somebody who their day job is being a dentist or a shopkeeper or a plumber and have them ask them sexually explicit questions. That is grooming behaviour. We're normalising the behaviour. And that bishop or stake president might think that what they're doing is completely okay because it was done to them.
Yeah.
It doesn't make it okay. And what you're doing is setting that child up for that next abusive relationship where they are asked to let down boundaries which should be in place, and they're asked to put themselves in more and more vulnerable situations and feel guilty and internalize it, rather than feel I can talk to people about this because I didn't want that to happen to me, and it happened to me, and I should be okay to tell people, and it should be safe, and I shouldn't be shamed about it. And that all of those things need to be broken down at church. We need to break down and say, if somebody asks you to dance, you can tell them to shove off. If somebody asks you out on a date, you can tell them, no, thank you, not interested. And boys, you can say the same. But it's usually that way round. And at FSY, that was very normalised just 10, 12 years ago when my older two were there, that they were not allowed to say, girls were not allowed to say no to boys. And boys were put in that horrible situation of having to go and ask girls as well, even when they didn't want to necessarily dance, which in the UK is not our culture. We don't do that. But that was, oh, hello, Elliot. That was put in, and they were told they had to go through those tropes. They were groomed to behave in a way that was not normal to them, and to accept things that they felt uncomfortable with and wanted to say no to. Big flashing red lights telling you why are we normalizing that sort of thing to children.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, this is
tell them you're not allowed to say no to anything. You just got to do it. You just got to do it.
Yeah, recreating the cultural norms that were prevalent around the time of Jane Austen is not the way to teach kids. That you're not teaching the manners. It's not helping. It's absolutely fine if a young woman is sitting down and doesn't dance. If she wants to, be kind. That's the only thing that needs to be driving you. Anyway, we talked a little bit about our motivations, about some of the work other projects are engaging in. We've talked a little bit about, sort of some of the things we've learned from victims. I want to come to this question from our dear friend Oil Stories. How did Jane and Sarah not lose their faith over this? Because I did. Sarah, do you want to speak to that? And you're on mute, girl.
First of all, there's a significant difference between any kind of faith or relationship with Jesus Christ and God and the church. There is the church, there is the gospel. They are different. There may be some overlap, maybe a bit, but they're different. Mm-hmm. What I think about God and Jesus is one thing. What I think about the leadership of the church is a completely different issue. Do you know? And it's, yes, there's been things that I'm angry and I'm frustrated with the church about, but there's a lot of things. Safeguarding is one of them. But yes, there's been things around safeguarding that I've been in despair of. I've lost confidence, but I probably didn't have phenomenal confidence in the leadership for everything anyway. But definitely, yes, I have been in despair over their safeguarding, delays, concerns, and the culture. And I hear what you're saying. They might be teaching it's one and the same, but that's what the church are teaching. Oil Stories, I'm not teaching that. I claim the opposite, and that will probably get me in trouble, but
no.
But so be it. If it does, it does. But for me, there's God, there's Jesus, my relationship with Jesus Christ and God. There's my relationship with the church.
Mm-hmm.
There is some overlap, but there is certainly no reliance that I need one for the other.
Only because I know that you will be okay with me doing this.
Yeah, you go for it.
I'm going to ask you to go deeper.
Okay.
And so, and I'll prompt you if I need to.
Ask me the question, Jane, because I think I'll find it easier if I'm if I'm answering a direct question.
Yeah, well, because if I sort of maybe talk a little bit, for me, I don't know, maybe I have lost my faith in the church. Maybe I don't know, it depends what day of the week it is. I feel like making the difference between what the church teaches and what Christ teaches, it's become now problematic for me because in this faith space, they look exactly the same, they smell exactly the same, so I'm just calling it something else, and it becomes part of my cognitive gymnastics that I end up trying to do to make it make sense by saying, oh, that's not the church, actually Jesus is, maybe, there are days I wake up and I want to throw it all in the bin, all of it. And then there are days where I feel like here is exactly where I'm supposed to be, and this is what my ministry looks like, and if that's the only thing that I'm certain about, it's that this in this time, in this moment is right. And I don't know, it's not always so I'm still very much in the process. Right. So let me come back, Sarah. What you thinking?
Well, first of all, Deborah Squires has said, so did you have a faith crisis with the church? I had a faith crisis with the church years ago. Yeah. We go back several years. My faith and confidence in the church waned significantly going back years. So that's kind of separate. That hasn't come about because of safeguarding. That was kind of already there. Utter despair over gay inequality, over the pox, various other things, racism, lots and lots of other things. So that's kind of a separate issue to safeguarding. Hearing the pain of victims and hearing the number of victims that have never had the slightest respect from the church of an apology or support makes me angry with the church. It leaves me frustrated, and it leaves me doubting sometimes the organisational ability to reach in a human level the way I would like a faith community to be able to do, to reach out to people on a human level. But somewhere, and I can't explain this, I'll do my best, but I struggle with it. Somewhere deep inside all of this messiness and all of this trust crisis and frustration and difficulties I have with the church and the leadership, and my complete separation between my relationship with Christ and my relationship with the church, somewhere amongst all of this, I have an absolute confirmation that we, as in Ruth, Jane and myself, we are supposed to be doing the work that we are doing now around safeguarding. I know that. I don't doubt it. I've had it confirmed to me. I have looked for loopholes out. Trust me, I've looked for loopholes out to say, hey, enough is enough now. I can leave. I'm sorry, my phone's ringing. Let me just turn that off. I'm sorry. Sorry, folks.
It's sorry,
sorry, Kemi. If you're listening, I'll phone you back later. Right. But yeah. So wherever I was at, I know that God is calling us to do this. Whatever God looks like to different people, I have a sense that we are this is our ministry. This is something we should be doing at this moment in time. And I'm going to own that it has a shelf life. It has a shelf life for my mental health. If for no other reason, it has a shelf life. But we can't walk away from the victims whose pain we've experienced. We can't walk away from the fact that the church should and can do better than they are doing. And we have to find a way of working with that in a way that gives our voice credibility in the space we needed to have credibility with the leadership of the church for the benefit and the sake of victims and future victims. And sometimes that's a very difficult path to navigate, because there are ways that we have to go about having those conversations when we pick the phone up and we want to speak to the Legal Counsel for Europe, the head guy, and say, we are concerned about a risk you have in this church. We have to approach that conversation in a way that means we're going to be able to get to the end of it and be heard.
I actually think it's a really interesting position as well to be in, that we don't have a vested interest in trying to make the church look good. Nor do we have a vested interest in trying to, discredit the church. We don't have an agenda other than supporting victims. But what about you, Ruth? What's it like for you when, because you've stepped away? What is coming back into one of the most tough things to talk about? What's that been like?
It's actually, I feel freer, I think, because I don't associate with the faith anymore, and I don't hold any space for sorry ladies, but I don't believe in Mormon God, and I don't believe in Mormon's version of Jesus either. I think Jesus was a real person. I don't believe he was raised from the dead. I don't believe he was the son of a God. I don't believe he created the world. I don't believe any of those things anymore. But what I do believe in is humanity, and I believe people have an ability to be both wonderful, the best of the best, the most kind, and reason to keep going even when life is tough, sort of people to be around, or the most wonderful people to be around, but also can be the devil incarnate. And what's unfortunate is that I find more humanity and more kindness and more love and generosity and just the types of caring and support that I would expect to see within religion. I find that outside of religion, because unfortunately religion has become this place where those structures can go unchecked, and Mormonism is a case in point of that. I look at it now with fresh eyes and can see how from the very beginnings of the church, and I don't mean to offend anybody who still believes in Joseph Smith and thinks he was a good guy. I do not think he was a good guy. I think he was a bad guy. I think he was a con man, and I think he was an abuser. He abused his actual wife, and he conned people into all sorts of things, including the forced marriages of children. And they weren't marriages because he never, physically looked after them or cared for them or had an open relationship with them as you would expect for husband and wife. But I can, whole other thing. But I think baked in from the very beginnings of this religion and hidden from me when I joined it as a 14, 15-year-old was that is normalized within this religion to be okay with bad behavior because you're acting in other ways for God. That's never okay in my eyes. I expect better of people who stand and claim to speak for God, and I expect a higher, more authentic level of caring, which includes correcting people when they are wrong, than this church emulates. The only thing that they seem to care about is their money and keeping it for themselves, and not actually helping people in the way that I would expect biblical Jesus to think that anything named in his name would want to act. And so when I come back and look at it with fresh eyes and say, could the church do better? Yes, it flipping well could. Yeah. Do the people who are still active at church deserve a safe place to find a relationship with God? Absolutely. And am I prepared to, fight the good fight and stand with you guys and help you in whatever you want to do? Absolutely. I'll do it every day and on Sundays, because
you do. I'm going to push us on a little bit here.
Yeah.
So, because we have a big announcement that's coming up. Tell us. So we talked about the spiritual toll. For both of you, we have had some really, really tough discussions. And I think especially women in a patriarchy having to push and having to engage and deal with the setbacks, and so it's tough. So what have we learned as women engaging in a patriarchy, and what do we do to look after ourselves? What's our self-care?
You guys are sat in this space more so than I am, and you're having these conversations and your heads aren't exploding. So you tell me, because I don't know how you're doing it.
Right, Sarah?
I think it's not an exaggeration to say that we've rarely had a full day off from something to do with safeguarding.
Yeah.
We made an odd few, we've never ever had as much as 5 consecutive days without something that we've had to do, or a discussion.
Even when we're sick, yes.
Even when we're sick, and even when we're in a tent in the middle of Dartmoor and things like that, we have literally been having to have conversations and hoping and praying the internet signal is going to hold out as we're talking to somebody who's hurting, or we're addressing a risk issue that somebody's brought to our attention, or we're responding to a request for information or whatever it is. So it has taken a toll in that it probably has taken over our lives. I think that's probably true to say it has. But for whatever reason, we'd do it again in a heartbeat. I say we, Jane should speak for that for herself, but I believe we would do it. I would do it again. I believe you guys would do it again in a heartbeat. There's been a roller coaster of emotion around literally from the beginning. Are we going to get excommunicated? Are we going to get sort of shunned, kicked out in a different ways? What's going to happen? Are we going to have a voice within this community at the end of this? There's been that roller coaster of will they, won't they? How's this going to work? What's going to happen? That roller coaster's been difficult at times. It's been kind of okay at other times. There's been wonderful moments where we've been able to see people flourish and grow and feel empowered and take control and just be grateful that they've been listened to and heard. There's been wonderful. There's been moments when leaders have said to us, I've done a 360-degree turnabout on safeguarding since talking to you. There's been incredibly uplifting, encouraging moments. There's been utter despair. There's been anger, there's been despair, there's everything in between. How do we switch off from all of that? My way of switching off from all of that is I go walking, I go camping. I pick my tent up, I toddle off and I go camping for a few days, and I go walking and I enjoy the stillness, the calmness, the beauty. And I remind myself that this is a fabulous world, that I love this world, and that I've got many, many good people that love me and that I'm friends with. I will be 100% honest, and this is possibly not going to go down the greatest, but what the heck, we're into honesty in 21st century saints. A lot of my spiritual needs are obtained. Is that the right word? A lot of spiritual feeding, nurturing comes from out the church. Other people that have their own faith, their own history, their own faith traditions. A lot of the nurturing and spiritual feeding that I get comes from that, not from church, because church is actually hard work. It's hard work, it really is.
Yeah, it is.
A lot of my spiritual nourishment comes elsewhere. And my laughing and joking and have ridiculous conversations 1 o'clock in the morning when we're crying with laughter comes with you guys.
Yeah. We I think having the broader 21st century saints is everything. I think having the Brit Vengers who are our bases is everything. Really, really helps. We've all become really close in doing this work, and I think to suggest that I switch off from it would be, I don't think that would be being honest with myself. and I think similarly, this is very different, Sarah, from whenever you were working and it was a 9-to-5 job, and
very different.
So yeah, this is
very different.
It's our life, it's our spirituality, it's our world, and we don't keep office hours. So what we do is have to super look after ourselves, and there are times when we do that better times than others. So sometimes we have to remind ourselves that we get to bed. This is complete craziness. We need a break. We've had those conversations, and yeah, I think it's just having a circle of support that if ever we need held up as we try to hold up that work, we have other people who are holding us up. We have organizations who, I would love to see the church as one of those people who hold us up, one of those organizations. It is less so. Some individuals within it, absolutely, maybe at times. But organizations such as NWG have been incredible. Yeah. So if ever, so we have that. But yeah,
and Jane, I think it's worth recognising that NWG actually spoke to us and put on the table, what you are doing is going to have a heavy toll emotionally and spiritually, and you need support. And where are you getting that from? Because we can offer that to you in a regular discussion. And they've been absolutely amazing at helping us think things through. Yeah.
And I think the other thing as well, just because I can see it sort of in the chat as well, is we have organisations, we mentioned Floodlit, but one of our dearest friends is one of the admins on Protect the Children, Katie, who's absolutely wonderful, and sometimes we're maybe having a chat about things that are either happening in the background or but it's also worth I think saying that when you have someone like Katie, like organisations like Protect the Children, which currently that's been led by a survivor. So to sort of, I haven't survived abuse within the Mormon Church, and this is a very different world for me. So I guess I would just say, don't forget to show the admins on those pages some love and your support, because they are doing incredible work, and they are there for us too. I love that this space has become it's become a real environment. It works. We work symbiotically at times, and there are no ex-Mormons and Mormons in this space. It's been so inspiring.
That's what I love.
Yeah, that's the
joined together. It's joined everyone together. Whether you believe or have any belief in anything anymore, whether you have massive belief and trust everything the church ever says. Whatever end of that spectrum you're on, everybody is united and come together for safeguarding.
And I don't think it could have happened. Okay, so maybe that's the other question that we are frequently asked is, how come we saw the results? Because people are working so hard and have been for years, and people are contacting us so supportively, but also a little bit brokenhearted. Like, I have been working really hard. Yeah. So, any thoughts on that?
My opinion is that it's like in the First World War when they would go over the top sort of thing, and you'd have wave after wave after wave of fallen soldiers going over the top and getting shot down, and going over the top and getting shot down, and going over the top and getting shot down. And sadly, that's what the Mormon Church is allowed to happen with this sort of activism, which is they've cut down people with excommunication. They've cut down people by minimizing what they're saying or misconstruing what they're saying. They've cut down people by ignoring them and allowing them to leave the church. They've cut down the victims of abuse by making it the only safe option is to lose their faith and move away. They've cut down people for the worst possible reason, which is they take their own lives off, and that's a horrible consequence of abuse. But these waves and waves and waves of people have gone over the top, and I think partly it is you are flipping tenacious women who don't take no for an answer, and were prepared from day one to say, if this costs us our membership, so be it. I was neither here nor there on membership. I'd have been incensed if this what got me chucked out, but I'd neither here nor there. That, it's like taking away my Dennis the Menace badge. I don't care. I don't buy the Beano anymore. And I feel like so partly it was your personality type and your ability to say what you needed to say and not take no for an answer, but partly it was because somehow we were going over the top at the point that the guns were being reloaded, and we just managed to get across that no man's land, pitch the flag, and once that flag was up there, how could they say no? How could they say no when you've done a national conference? How could they say no to it when the press around the world is pointing out where Mormonism has had to pay out millions and millions of pounds in compensation to victims who they failed through the scouting program in the States? How could they say no when there is evidence over and over and over again of where the current system has failed people and doesn't work? And what you're suggesting isn't just this is bad, and this is what you can do to improve it. You've come to them with a solution. And so I think it's a combination of all of those things.
It is. And I think that's really, really true, Ruth. It's a combination of all those factors. I think the one thing also that has absolutely been in our favour and has been absolutely pivotal to this is we approached the church with evidence-based research. We didn't just walk in there and shout angry words at them and angry slogans at them and angry messages. We walked in and we said, this is what the best experts in the UK say you should be doing as a faith community to safeguard. This is what the UK government say you should be doing. These are the recommendations from serious case reviews, from independent inquiry. These are the things that you should be doing. These are the things that you are failing to do. And these are some examples of people that have been harmed that may not or would not have been harmed had you been doing these things. So we gave them evidence, we gave them research, we gave them information, we wrote safeguarding policy documents, we wrote guidelines for bishops, we wrote how to respond to abuse documents. We put huge amounts of information that was all credible, evidence-based, and came from the best experts in the UK, and we put all of that together for the church. So we absolutely backed up everything that we were being tenacious and challenging and difficult about saying, but we backed all of it up with examples of why things were going so wrong in the church and what they should be doing. And I think that had a huge amount to do with the fact that the church had one option. Well, we don't care what the UK government is saying.
We're losing you a little bit again, Sarah.
Every single children's charity says that. We're okay. Have you got me?
Yeah.
So we didn't actually just sit there.
I'm going to just mute Sarah just now while the internet settles down again, because we've kind of lost her a little bit.
I think what Sarah said there was really important, Jane, in that she was saying you came with all of that evidence, and that was in stark contrast to the testimony that was given in 2019 by the UK church lawyer to the Charities Commission. It was basically saying that what was said in 2019 didn't align with the actual facts.
I think there's something. I think there's another couple of elements too, and this is the with the same spirit that we talk about the different approaches. I think that's to circle back to mentioning the floodlit approach and it's needed. Without people who historically have been excommunicated, from going right back to the early history of the church, the September 6th, without that kind of thing happening, we wouldn't be where we are. However, we had to work, I think, with a combination of someone who was an engaged member, because the church can engage with with experts and hear research constantly. It's being sent, it's been invited to engage. Well, I think when you have someone who has the level of expertise that we've been able to, that we've had been blessed with Sarah, when we have been able to extrapolate the information that is needed from that research to make it specific to this church, so that this cut and paste, thing wouldn't work. But it wouldn't have been the same result. What would have happened if we had protested outside church headquarters or outside the temple, outside our buildings, outside? What we would have seen was a battening down of the hatches, because we would have been anti-Mormons, and it wouldn't have worked. Not only did we have the right person in Sarah, the right platform in here, the right information, the government policies were all in place. We also, it's really worth keeping in mind, the church did not have to do this. There is no obligation for them to put these policies in place. But we had leaders who had connected with us. They had come to us, who were prepared to sort of talk about how they really felt about it. And we, although completely disagree with lots of things, we had that same purpose. In addition to that, then we've got the people who are actively advocating for things in other ways, who are ex-Mormon, who are calling out the church in very public ways. We have victims who were trusting us and coming forward, both to the media and to us. And so I think it's been a very unique set of circumstances that could only have happened in an area that was small enough. Trying this out in the British Isles to then see, well, how would this work globally, I think is absolutely incredible. I don't think it could have happened somewhere else.
Yeah, I think Richard made a point in the comments as well about the fact that a nod to the area presidency that we currently have, and that is leadership roulette, which is an easily banded around.
Yes,
but I think it has some validity here. I think that's a roll of the dice. So the people across the world just keep on pushing, because a change of leadership could mean that door swings open, and maybe the actions are the right actions in certain areas, but you just got to wait for the right ears to be listening to the message, and them to go, I can see a way to make this work in our area too.
Definitely.
That's the structure that the church operates in. They have this leadership structure, and you have to wait for the leadership in the local area to say yay or nay to something, no matter what a good idea it is or what the experts say. That's the structure that's the rules you're playing by. So that has been part of it, and fortunately that has worked. Now, does that mean that door swings closed again if you get a new leadership, if your stake president changes, or your bishop changes, or your area presidency changes? If we get a new prophet, does it all swing in the opposite direction? Who knows? What matters is that this combination of quiet determination and speaking to people privately, and then activism and having a public voice and saying, we're not going to be quiet, we'll be polite, but we're not going to be quiet. I think there's that good tension there between those two models that you've made work.
So I'm just conscious that time is moving on here, and what I'm going to do, rather than dig into sort of what we're seeing generally about how the new church guidelines, it's not perfect. It's got a way to go. We've covered this on other shows, so I'm going to direct you there for the moment, because no doubt we will pick it up and talk about it again. Just really quickly, because I want to come back to the replication of this work. And like I say, we do have a big announcement. Can anyone speak to how this is being received in the UK, both by members and leaders? What's the word on the ground?
Sarah,
I'll unmute you. Yeah, there you go. We can hear you, girl.
I'm that's good. We're hearing some good stuff. We know that safeguarding specialists are starting to be called. We're hearing of them now in post in several states. I know that I've had several invitations to go to different ward councils speaking sacrament meeting. Interesting, isn't it? Speaking sacrament meeting and train ward council. So I've had a few invitations to go and do that. So it'll be really interesting when that's happened to come back and talk about how that was received and how people experience that for themselves and what that's about. I've attended stake bishopric meetings and been able to talk to bishops, and they were really on board with this safeguard, and they all had questions about how are we going to make DBS work, how is this going to happen. They all had questions, but they were not questions that came from we don't want to do this is too much work. It was, we want the church to be safer, we want this to work. How do we do this? What do we do about this situation? Can you help me think about whether we should agree to this WhatsApp group or not? So there's some good discussion going on. So the people are thinking, they're asking questions.
And Sarah's dropped out a little bit again. It's okay, she'll be back. Ruth, you hearing any gossip about how?
Obviously, I don't attend church anymore, and our experience has been that we've been pretty much cut off from members. That's fine. But I have had a couple of people who know of my association with you guys and know that I do the podcast, just reach out to me privately and say thank you, which I pass that thanks on to you guys for doing the donkey work. But and I think that's quite interesting that in so many ways don't speak to me, don't communicate with me, but are quietly watching from the sidelines to see what happens and appreciative. I mean, the announcement back in June that this change is coming was monumental. It really was. I think people thought we were just dreamers and just shouting into the wind. So to see those changes not only happen, but that there was a time frame for them. It was not just a ephemeral goal. It was, this is going to happen by this date, and then this is going to happen by this date, and this is going to happen by this date. Not half the shopping list of actions we'd like to see, but a start was amazing. And to have people say off the record to the person who doesn't believe anymore, thank you. I think that's a big sign that there are people quietly at church just clinging on there by their fingertips and desperate for this sort of thing to be happening. So
I can't emphasize that enough. Yes, the people who are working in this space who are not affiliated with the church, and maybe never have been in some cases, but the people that are doing this work, yes, absolutely. We would not be here if we hadn't all been in the same place together. So I don't know. I think I'm definitely understanding that from the early days of its announcement, there were a few raised eyebrows. We did have, people who are saying DBS like, oh, this is going to be more work, background checks, something else we're going to have to do. We haven't had to have them up until now, and we've been just fine. We haven't seen a problem without. Well, let's face it, church leaders have been saying for quite some time that everything is fine and we don't need them. And I think they've believed, really, really sincerely believed that. But tough. This is the Lord's way, so get behind it. See, I can use your words against you. So I think there can be a little bit of grumbling. Certainly a little bit of concern about potential releases.
Yeah.
It definitely hasn't all sort of, we're not currently sitting in the UK with a safeguarding specialist in every state just yet. I don't know if it's sort of evolved into it's sort of being rolled out more sort of slowly. I think while they had intended for it to, here's when we're going to do it, it's sort of becoming a little bit more slow than that. But we do have this ultimate deadline. Where it will be done by the end of the year. So people are being called, they are being set apart. For the most part, people are absolutely behind it. Leaders are engaging in the training, they are using the safeguarding specialists. I think we're going to have to see the training starting to come into place before we can sort of see here's what we can feed back about how it looks in practice. Because it's all very well to have these people. Is it going to affect how safeguarding happens? And we still don't have that language. So the training is really going to have to address that. We're not going to be able to be in a situation where you have a session of training with a safeguarding specialist and then you suddenly understand safeguarding. There are processes here. So yeah, it's still very much an unfolding picture. Sarah, girl, you're muted. Yeah, you're not muted on here. You might need to go out and come back in again. Right, I think what we need to do is we need to have a fundraiser for Sarah's internet and speakers. We're going to get you there, Sarah. Yeah, if you just reload and come back in again, I'm sure we'll be fine. So we want to, I think we want to present a picture here of safeguarding that, yeah, things are looking great. Things are on their way to looking great. Things have got a very long way to go, though. Yeah. Anything that you want to comment on before we do the big announcement?
Big announcement. No, and I think you're absolutely right. We are waiting to see how it progresses.
Yeah.
The time frame was set by the church themselves, and so we will be calling them to repentance if they don't stick to their goals and aims. And I think the fact that they haven't hit their goals as far as timings so far is maybe, with all of these things, evidence of how difficult a process this is, and we acknowledge that. So we will support them and cheer them on as they recognize the fact that this isn't going to be easy. This is a huge cultural change, as well as embedding new practices and policies and training that needs to take place. So we appreciate that they may slip a little from their targets, but we'll hold them to them because they
absolutely
set
Sarah,
those goals.
I think your sound is back. It's quiet, but we've got you.
I think it is. Excellent.
Yeah.
I think one thing we need to be aware of as well is that we have had people talk to us that are worried of DBS coming back with information on that might not necessarily be about abuse, but they're worried about what reaction church leaders will have when they see that information.
Yes.
So we have had some conversations with people worried, and conversations with people worried because they know that there's been child protection concerns about their children in the past, and they're worried that may show up. So you know, some people are worried about the DBS process from that perspective, but overwhelmingly, what has been incredible is the number of victims that have said it is just such a relief to know that their abuser will never be able to teach primary again. Yeah. You know, and comments like that has just been, I mean, if nothing else, it's been worth it for that, you know.
Oh, it's been a privilege to be able to take when someone has a live concern or even a historic concern, if there is any reassurance that needs to be given about whether a person is still potentially working with children, to be able to directly engage in that has been such an honor. The support of the people who have been with us during this campaign has allowed us to make that kind of difference and literally keep children safe. It sounds so big because it is so big. Sarah, do you want to close us out before we do the announcement?
Okay, yeah, because I think there's credit to so many people in this journey, credit to victims that have been courageous enough to speak up and share their stories, credit to church leaders that have been willing to listen to a couple of tenacious, difficult women kind of say, hey, this is not good enough, and credit to all the people that have worked behind the scenes, helping us do so many things. You know, helping us send letters to every bishop, helping us gather information, helping us reach out and talk to people, you know, just so many people to thank in this whole story. And we would do it again. We would do it again in a heartbeat. Just
yes,
to make that
we
difference.
would. And do you know what? We will.
We will. Because we haven't finished yet.
We're ready for the big announcement. We want to say a huge thank you to everyone who has donated to us. It has let us produce a website. It has let us send letters. It has let us do this. We are so thankful for all of the support that you have given. The next thing that we would like to do is to directly respond to the questions that we have. How can I do this in my area? How can we replicate this? What things can we learn about what has worked here? What can we do? What we're going to do is on the 10th of September in 2023, we are hosting a 21st Century Saints worldwide safeguarding development workshop. Now, what we're asking for you to do, it's going to be held on Zoom. What we're asking for you to do is you can, currently it's on our Facebook page. So if you go take a look there, you will find the relevant information. But what's going to happen is we're going to host, it will be an evening for us. It will be an afternoon for most of the rest of the world. We're going to talk a little bit about the specifics, the steps that we took. We're going to have some information about what you need to understand about the landscape of safeguarding, some really important things to help you give you a context so that you have a language to be able to use in the work that you do. We're going to be able to help you to network with other people in your area so that you can get together with people who would like to work to the same end. We're going to have guest speakers who are going to give you some information about justice, about legal issues, about the theology of safeguarding specific to the LDS Church, but also specific to other faiths. We're going to be able to talk about what we can learn from what other faiths have learned in their safeguarding journeys. There are some really exciting things. So from today, 1 year after we launched the 21st Century Saints Safeguarding Campaign, which was unique to how things were working in the UK, we would now like to hand the baton to you. So we need your help. We would love for you to show up. There's going to be opportunities to ask questions, and this is as close to a kind of training that we can offer. This is the very best way to organise and plan and ask for safeguarding in your area. It is to come together in exactly the same page with exactly the same end, with your various methods and your various passions and your talents, and to get to work. And that's going to mean doing things like Sarah did, meeting with her elected representatives. It's going to maybe mean sending out some emails. It's maybe going to mean meeting with your own leaders. Now, if you don't want to meet with your leaders, you don't have to, but you're going to find that we're going to be able to put you in touch with people who will be happy to do that. And making these relationships, I believe, are the very best way that you can make a start in letting your local leaders know and your area leaders know that this is important to you. You're going to be so informed about safeguarding that you will be able to be a fantastic source of information for your leaders and for any organisations who are supporting this faith community as to reach this goal of safeguarding. This is going to be the start of a journey, and you are going to be able to be someone who is going to be possibly the best resource to get us to that end goal. We are really excited to share it with you. Now, our programme is still slightly evolving. We're going to be making the announcements about who specifically will be speaking. It is only in a few weeks' time, so mark your calendars. You do have to pre-register, but if you would consider joining us then we would absolutely be honoured to have you with us. Spread the word. So with that, we're going to say farewell for tonight. Next week, we're going to have a fantastic discussion. We will be back with you. We're also going to have David Shepherd, who is a wonderful ex-Mormon who is a therapist. He does fantastic work. He supported many of our faith community, and he's very, very well loved in the UK Mormon community. He's going to come back and he's going to talk to us about the subject of being anxiously engaged. If you are going to church every week and feeling church anxiety, and people are saying, why are you still going? If you're starting to wonder that yourself, if you have no intention of going anywhere and you just want to try and make it work, well, we've got a therapist who's going to give you some tips. And, maybe we're going to wrestle with that question. Why the hell are we still going if it's really, really hard? Anyway, we're going to have a chat. We're going to talk about some of the tough stuff and, hear from people who have left, like Ruth. And we're going to hear from people who are staying engaged and suffer church anxiety every. When does it start for you, Sarah? What night's your church anxiety night? Is it Saturday or do you...
Well, if I'm going to church, because I don't go every week, but if I'm going, I usually think Saturday night. I think,
that's the big night.
I'm going to church tomorrow. I'm going to church in the morning.
Yeah, me too.
And I have to be clear, everybody in my ward is lovely and super friendly and super kind. I don't go to church and have people be horrible to me. It's just I'm struggling with just so much dissonance and so many challenges that it's a difficult place to be. But the people in my ward are lovely. So I don't want anyone to go away thinking that they're horrible. They're not. They're lovely.
Yeah, and if you're a member of the church who goes to church and doesn't experience Mormon anxiety, please join us and tell us how you do it. We would love to learn from you. Just to quickly answer the comments, yes, if safeguarding means choosing between your membership in the church and keeping children safe, we all know what the answer is. We all know what the most important thing is. I think we've been able to demonstrate that you'll be fine, that you're not going to get kicked out of the church.
We're still here.
For the simple reason that those who have gone before you and those who are being extremely vocal are allowing us to speak up and use your voice. So if you have any credibility, capital, or just connection, if you're still in the church membership records, use it. Please don't be afraid to use your voice. It's what you were called to do. So I want to really encourage and support. And although it's a valid fear, and it might happen, I don't know. This is a really good landscape and a really good time to do that. As for Kaz, yes, it will be a Zoom link. We will all be hanging out on Zoom, whether you love or hate Zoom. We will make it work. And yes, Oil Stories, who really enjoys her second Saturdays because she just doesn't go. I bless your Sundays. Fantastic. Okay, thank you all so much. And we will see you right here next week. Don't forget, come and find us, register for the show, drop us a donation, send us some love, give us a like. We really appreciate you and all you do. And thank you so much for being with us in this journey. We bless yours. Good night, everyone.
Night.
Good night. Night.